Hey Ramon, good to see you, man.
Hey Captain, it's good to be back with you. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So let's jump in. What project are we talking about today?
So today, what I'd like to talk to you about is a project that is quite close to my heart. It's still relatively unknown, and it's called Raven Protocol. Raven is a decentralized and distributed deep learning training protocol that will utilize the Ethereum network as its backbone. It aims to provide cost-efficient and faster training of deep neural networks. So in essence, they're going to be addressing the issue of computation capacity in the training of machine learning and deep learning models. What do I actually mean by this? The largest inhibiting factor currently with regards to AI training is the fact that it takes a huge amount of computational capacity to do such training. This generally limits developers and programs' abilities to actually scale their models and to train them effectively. Raven plans on addressing this issue of computational capacity by significantly reducing the in-house computing power required to train models. So I asked myself, how are they actually planning on doing this? So the Raven Foundation is trying to create a self-sustaining and dynamic ecosystem for customers who want to train their AI engines regularly to keep them updated. And contributors will support the ecosystem by sharing their computing resources. So Raven will facilitate dynamic allocation of nodes to the participating devices in the network. A user will be able to earn Raven tokens in return for allowing the network to utilize his or her additional computing power to train these deep learning models. And this will ultimately result in faster, cost-efficient training of deep neural networks with a focus on high throughput.
So it's essentially Golem with deep learning.
100%. What they're aiming to do essentially is utilize all of that unutilized computing capacity in an area where it could actually make a difference. I think all of us, we don't necessarily know the power of our own computing capacity or our own computers, and we use very little of it most of the time. They'd like to try and capitalize on this and start using that computing capacity to assist in training AI models.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, I actually know what you're talking about because their model is pretty interesting. There's a big difference between a GPU and a CPU. And a GPU can do small calculations in thousands per second, while a CPU may be 1,000 times faster, but it can only do like 50 to 100 calculations per second.
Yeah, well, this is actually something that I wanted to address. Some of your viewers may be asking themselves, what exactly is deep learning? Deep learning is the spearhead of artificial intelligence. It's a subfield of machine learning that is concerned with algorithms inspired by the structure of the human mind. Called artificial neural networks. So let me give you an example. If you wanted to create an algorithm that would identify what breed of dog is in a picture, you would then need to feed it, in some cases, tens of thousands of images of dogs from all different breeds, from all over the world, and different angles and different positions, before it can start actually classifying these new photos by breed of dog with relative accuracy. And the larger the training data set, the better the performance of the algorithm. So deep learning requires substantially more data than older learning algorithms, which highlights the problem of being able to actually compute and process this data.
Actually, what you said with the dog is the difference between classical learning and deep learning. So the dog would be like image recognition, right? So let's say you need to find a dog with a type of nose. So the classical learning, the traditional method is you would say a beagle nose, a German Shepherd ears, all these attributes that you would put. But with deep learning, you don't need to. It'll just extract these features on its own, and it's going to learn, and it's going to create its own vocabulary with its own data size and its database.
That's really interesting. I think that you are a lot more tech inclined than I am, so yeah, that really puts things into perspective. Thank you.
Okay, so the biggest takeaway I would say is that, deep learning, it has limitations these days, But since Raven is decentralized and is actually distributed, you can actually access all of these advices and they can put together a treasury of RAM so they can actually compute anything they want. So it can actually beat Facebook or Google.
That was good. I actually like that. And the idea of a treasury of RAM is quite a powerful saying, quite a powerful coined term that you've just hit.
So Ramon, let's jump into their team, who they got.
Yeah, so the team at this stage is still relatively small because the project is still in its early days. Not a lot of people know about it. I think it's still quite a way off in terms of the ICO. But the team has combined experience across the spectrums of blockchain, artificial intelligence, distributed computing, machine learning, among other related skills. You know, Sherman Lee, one of the co-founders at Raven, I'd like to touch on some of his accomplishments, you know, among the many. But he worked as a software engineer at Yahoo in Silicon Valley for close to 4 years, where he scaled their content platform from 0 to 600 million users, and then moved into a senior product manager role for a little over a year there. He's also the co-founder of Good Audience, which assists deep tech companies in developing brand value and growing audiences via marketing and content creation. Over and above these achievements, he is also a partner at Zeroth, which is Asia's first accelerator program that backs founders working on frontier technologies such as AI. He's been involved in blockchain since the early days of the technology. I think that he's a really strong team member. You know, his other co-founder, a guy by the name of Rahul Vishwakarma. Rahul is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Mate Labs, which is based in Bangalore, which is India's Silicon Valley. Mate Labs specializes in building, training, and deploying machine learning solutions. Mateverse, which is a platform that Mate Labs developed, is aimed at democratizing machine learning and makes it easy for novices within the space to use machine learning in their applications by providing a user-friendly interface that can train models and subsequently implement them using APIs.
Something that's really good about that is like Mate Labs is already doing what Raven is. They're going to use what they have from Mate Labs as an experiment for Raven Protocol, which is great.
What I find quite fascinating is that, you know, the idea for Raven Protocol came directly from their experience in the limitations of the technology. You know, they obviously had frustrations with regards to the fact that maybe computing power was a limiting factor. I love the fact that Raven was born out of issues that they probably dealt with on a day-to-day basis.
So tell me a little bit more about their roadmap.
Okay, so their roadmap at this stage is quite long-term, which is not ideal relative to what many investors would like and expect in the space. But at the same time, their roadmap seems to be a lot more realistic. I've seen a lot of projects that have had to extend their roadmap targets because of bad planning, which in my opinion is the worst thing that you can do. You know, it's always better to over-deliver and under-promise, in my opinion. So in May 2019, they will be implementing onto the Ethereum Network and testing the framework with selected companies. In July of 2019, they plan on launching their private beta, with a full public beta launch expected in September 2019. But what I'd like to note is that they currently have a working alpha, which, as you know from our previous videos, it's a very important thing to me because it shows that there is some sort of proof of concept. Yeah, it excites me that they've already got something that's working.
Yep, you know, MVPs are what we're all about. And, you know, I don't think you would have brought this project to me if they didn't have something already ready.
100%. You know, I'd also like to touch a little bit on the fact that they are looking to establish meaningful and long-term partners within the blockchain space that'll add long-term sustainability and value for the users of the Raven protocol and the subsequent value offering. They also plan on exploring collaborations in Africa, which is, in my opinion, very exciting, as Africa has largely been ignored within the space. We as a community say that blockchain technology will be a revolution for future generations, but projects have largely focused on markets that arguably don't need this technology as much as the third world does. You know, blockchain technology at its core is about empowerment of those less empowered. And to me, this illustrates that their hearts as well as their minds are in the right place, and I have to give them full credit for this.
And you are in South Africa.
Yeah, so, you know, so I was born and raised in South Africa. I understand that largely the whole continent has been ignored within the space. You know, recently we have had blockchain conferences and a lot more awareness. But for me, I've found that a lot of these projects are focusing on markets where they feel they can raise the most funds as opposed to make the biggest impact.
So how will this impact Africa?
So they're going to look to actually collaborate with, you know, content providers, or content websites, rather, news websites. They're looking to also looking at collaborating with network providers. And what I think will essentially happen is they are looking to tap into an African market in a way that others haven't looked to do. Mostly people are focusing on how they can prop up blockchain technology within first world nations at this stage. You know, they are aiming their sights at first world nations. And I think that Raven doesn't necessarily have a myopic view of who will be using their technology and how it will be used. They are taking a lot more of a lateral view in terms of bolstering and strengthening the network and the protocol.
And do you know why they can do that? It's because their technology allows you to do these tests, these trainings on your browser. And you can actually do, they scaled it, they shard it down to bytes, not kilobytes, to bytes.
I think it's absolutely incredible. And, you know, for all of these reasons, I really do believe that this is one to watch out for. You know, I don't know if you know about it now, but if you head over to ravenprotocol.com, you can subscribe to get your first 100 Raven tokens, which is fantastic as well. You know, and in subscribing, you will then also be notified of any new updates that are upcoming. Obviously, we know that this is early days. They don't necessarily have any token metrics out at this stage. There are still things that need to be clarified for investors with regards to the ICO going forward. But I really feel that this is a project that is trying to really make a change and an impact in the world, where we've been flooded with projects that have had an inward view of how they can find success for themselves, as opposed to actually changing the world, you know, and making a difference.
So the only thing that I would really like to see is how their token utility would be tied closer to their protocol from both a tech standpoint and from a business standpoint, because you could do that with ETH, you know, you could run the thing with ETH and you can do these with ETH. But if Raven is the token that actually shards down into the deep learning, then there's some use case there. So we'll see. It's too early.
100%. It's definitely very early on. You know, ultimately what we're trying to do is bring to the viewers some very exciting projects that maybe don't have you know, the token metrics out, etc. Generally, we focused on ICO reviews. I would consider this more to be a project overview, and to just kind of keep your eyes open on this one, because I think it's going to be making waves within the space.
So let's recap. We're not going to do a rating because their white paper is, you know, still very baby stages right now. Even though they have MVP, which is great. So let's talk about it. Let's summarize it, and let me know your overall thoughts.
Well, you know, on an overall perspective, I think that the team at this stage is quite small, but very strong and very passionate. I really like that they will be focusing on developing really strong, sustainable partnerships within the space. And I like that they will be looking to collaborate holistically within Africa. With regards to the roadmap, I do think that it's possibly over the longer term, but I also have seen a trend with a lot of projects in terms of, you know, they want a sustainable offering. And in wanting a sustainable offering, they're not going to take any shortcuts. And from that perspective, I do respect the longer timeline. You know, we'll only really see a lot of this come to fruition. I mean, the public beta will be launched in September of 2019. So we are talking about a longer term time horizon, but this is a long-term view. This is a long-term project.
Are you going to invest when time comes?
I'm going to be keeping my eye very much on this project, and from what I've seen thus far, I will be investing.
For all the viewers out there, if they have suggestions and they want you to cover a certain project, should they just message you on Twitter, or?
Please just maybe leave something below in the comments. We're always looking at the comments, and we're always also responding to any questions that the viewers may have. And I look forward to engaging again with them.
Okay, well, thanks for your time, Ramon. I'll talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon, Captain.